There are moments when a secret enters your life, not with a whisper, but with a jolt. Imagine being told that a single sound sung not by a choir or a machine, but by your own voice could unlock a power hidden inside you. Not in years, not in weeks, but in just 33 seconds. It sounds dangerous because it is. Not dangerous in the way of harm, but in the way of truth that can no longer be ignored once it is heard. The ancients spoke of this sound as if it were fire capable of burning, capable of illuminating. For centuries, it was kept behind temple walls, carried by those who understood that the voice was more than breath and syllables. It was a key, and once you use that key, the door it opens cannot be closed again. Tonight, that key is handed to you. No device, no ritual tools, no elaborate ceremony. Only your own voice, only your willingness to let it rise. In the next hour, you will discover why this simple act has been guarded for so long, why Thoth himself was remembered as the keeper of sacred sound, and how the very vibration you create can heal what has been broken and awaken what has been asleep. So, listen closely, because once you hear this secret, you will never hear your own voice the same way again. Long before anyone spoke of science, long before medicine took the form we know today, there was a man the ancients called Thoth. He was not remembered as a warrior or a king, but as the master of the living word. To the Egyptians, words were not just tools of communication, they were currents of creation, threads that tied the visible world to the invisible, and Thoth was said to have preserved the most powerful of those threads, the healing force of sacred sound. In the temples of old, there were no choirs meant to entertain. Instead, there were men and women trained from childhood for a very different purpose. They were called Jiao, guardians of sound. Their duty was not to sing beautifully, but to protect and transmit certain syllables with absolute precision. Each tone was seen as a key, and when sung in the right way, in the right space, it could unlock what nothing else could reach. They didn't view sound as music. They viewed it as a password to the deeper architecture of the soul. Imagine walking into a temple carved into the rock, the air still and heavy with incense. A single note rises, steady and unwavering. It doesn't just echo in your ears. It seems to move through your skin, down your spine, and into places you didn't even know existed. You feel warmth spreading in your chest. For some, tears begin to flow without warning. For others, a prise descend, so sudden, it feels like the body has exhaled for the first time in years. To the priests, these were not coincidences. They were signs the field had opened, and the sound had found its mark. The Egyptians believed that every trauma, every unspoken grief, every repressed emotion leaves an imprint on the subtle layers of the body. Over time, those imprints, not the energy field, and weigh us down. Medicine might look at the flesh, but sacred sound was their way of reaching the invisible scaffolding beneath it. Thoth taught that a certain tone could dissolve a knot, another could calm the mind, another could restore the balance of the heart. Healing, they believed, was less about curing disease and more about tuning an instrument back into harmony. And perhaps the most astonishing part is that none of this was considered superstition in its time. It was a spiritual science. The Jiao did not improvise. They followed strict cycles of breath, intention, and frequency. When they chanted, they believed they were not merely speaking into the air. They were entering into dialogue with the very forces that shaped existence. Today, it may sound foreign to us, raised in a world that prizes proof and measurement, yet the echoes remain. Anyone who has felt a song shake them to their core, anyone who has cried to a melody they couldn't explain, knows that sound has power. What Thoth preserved was not just myth, it was a reminder that healing doesn't always begin in the body. It begins in vibration. And the most incredible revelation is this: you don't need to stand inside a temple to feel it. The same password those priests once guarded still exists, and the voice capable of carrying it is already inside you. In the very first breath of existence, before the stars burned and before the oceans stirred, there was sound. Not sound in the way we hear it today, but vibration, pure resonance, moving through the void. Ancient traditions insisted this was not a metaphor. To the sages of India, it was Nada Brahma, the sound that is God, the hum that shaped the universe. To the Egyptians, it was the word of power, a current of vibration that did not describe reality, but generated it. Modern science, for all its technology, circles back to the same idea. Physics tells us that nothing is truly solid. Every atom vibrates. Every molecule hums with a hidden rhythm. The table, the tree, your own skin, Each is a dance of frequencies arranged into form. The universe is less like a machine and more like a great orchestra, and everything we touch is playing its part in a score we rarely hear. Now here is the wonder. If everything is vibration, then everything can be tuned. Just as a string can fall out of pitch, so too can our bodies, our minds, even our lives. Trauma is dissonance. Fear is static. Illness is the body slipping out of rhythm. But tuning is possible, and the instrument most capable of tuning your own field isn't an external device, it is your voice. Think about it. Every time you speak, your breath carries invisible waves that move through the air, touching not just ears but matter itself. Your bones vibrate when you hum. Your blood resonates with the rhythm of your words. This is not poetry, it's physics. Studies show that vocal tones can alter brainwaves, slow heart rates, and shift hormonal balance. The voice, when used with presence, is more than expression. It is creation. The ancients saw the voice as an antenna, stretching upward and downward at once. Upward, it linked the microcosm of the body to the macrocosm of the universe. Downward, it carried the pulse of the cosmos back into flesh and bone. To chant was not to perform, it was to align, to step into the primordial rhythm and let it retune every cell. Imagine the implications. If your words can reach the marrow of your own DNA, then speaking becomes more than communication. It becomes command, not the arrogant command of control, but the gentle directive of harmony. When you sing or chant with intention, you are participating in the same act that brought galaxies into being. You are reminding your cells of a music they have always known. This is where science and spirituality touch hands. One speaks of frequency, the other of sacred word, but both are pointing to the same truth. Sound shapes reality, and if the voice is sound embodied, then every one of us carries within us the very tool the universe used to begin. Your voice is not small, it is a fragment of the original vibration. It is the bridge between the stars above and the beating heart within. There is a rhythm hidden in the body, a secret cycle that ancient priests and mystics guarded with fierce devotion. They taught that when a voice is carried with presence for exactly 33 seconds, something extraordinary begins to happen. It isn't superstition, it isn't magic, it is the nervous system, the cells, the very energy field around you, responding to a command that only vibration can give. Picture yourself closing your eyes, drawing in one steady breath, and letting a single syllable roll out of you. The tone doesn't have to be beautiful, it doesn't have to be loud, but it must be steady, intentional, alive. For half a minute, your whole being is given over to that sound. At first, it feels like nothing more than a hum, but slowly, the edges blur, your chest warms, a quiet pulse begins to ripple outward. 33 seconds, just long enough for your field to reorganize itself, for the body to remember the pattern it was built to hold. And then comes the part most people overlook, the silence. 11 seconds of nothing, no chant, no breath, just the stillness after the sound. That pause is not empty, it is integration. Just as a seed must rest in the soil before it sprouts, the silence is where the vibration takes root. The priests of Thoth called it the seal. Without it, the sound is only noise. With it, the frequency imprints itself into your field, like fire setting into clay. There is a warning in this teaching too. The voice is neutral. It carries whatever is placed inside it. Rage, fear, resentment. These tones will also ripple through your body and through the people around you. The same key that heals can also harm, depending on the hand that turns it. That is why intention is not optional. When you chant, what you carry in your heart is just as important as the sound that leaves your lips. And here is the beauty. You need no instrument, no machine, no recorded track. The technology is already alive within you. Your voice is both the tool and the medicine. For centuries, the guardians of sound whispered of the 33-second code as a sacred law of healing. Today, it is still waiting to be used, not by priests behind temple walls, but by you, wherever you are, whenever you are ready to remember. The ancients often described the body as a temple, not a metaphorical one, but a structure with chambers and gates, each holding its own current of energy. Hidden within this temple are 7 thresholds, 7 places where spirit and flesh meet. Most of us pass through life without ever opening those doors, carrying their weight in silence. But Thoth's teaching spoke of a set of syllables, simple sounds that act as keys. Each one, when spoken or sung with presence, can unlock a chamber of the temple and release what has been trapped inside. The first is Lam. It sits low, resonating in the base of the spine. Chanting it grounds you, like planting your feet into the earth. It reminds the body that survival does not have to mean fear. It is the syllable of stability. Then comes Vam, a vibration that flows into the waters of emotion. It stirs creativity, intimacy, and the ability to feel without drowning. Many who chant it for the first time report tears, not of sorrow, but of released tears that feel like old rivers finally moving again. Ram ignites the fire in the center. It is willpower, clarity, the strength to act without aggression. Imagine the warmth of a hearth spreading outward. Ram clears the fog of hesitation and replaces it with direction. Yam belongs to the heart. It softens the chest and loosens the weight of grief. To speak Yam is to place balm on wounds that words alone could never reach. People often feel a tenderness they cannot explain, as if they were being held by something larger than themselves. Then there is Ham, the sound of the throat. It releases the fear of speaking truth, the shame of silence. Many describe feeling the neck loosen, the breath deepen, as if the body itself is relieved to no longer hold back. Om, perhaps the most recognized of all, opens the mind. It is the hum of cosmos, the vibration that threads thought to the infinite. Chanting Om is like looking into a vast sky and realizing you are not separate from its expanse. And finally, I am. It is not just a phrase, it is the declaration of existence itself. To chant it is to align with the fact that your being is not an accident. You are part of the living resonance that keeps the universe awake. Each syllable is like a seed. Alone, they bloom small flowers of release. Together, they create a garden, a climb from earth to sky. As one moves through them in sequence, the body responds. Layers of emotion rise and dissolve. Dormant perceptions awaken. It is less about learning something new and more about remembering what has always been there, waiting to be sung back into life. The Egyptians called these tones sound seeds, and they believed that when planted into the right field, the human heart, they would grow into new realities. To practice them is not to master a technique, but to take a journey through your own temple, step by step, chamber by chamber, until the silence within becomes radiant with sound. For centuries, the number 528 carried an air of mystery. Mystics whispered about it as if it were a secret chord of the universe, while skeptics dismissed it as fantasy. But what was once brushed aside as mysticism has slowly been circling back into the light of science. Today, researchers, armed with instruments that measure the finest vibrations of cells and DNA, are confirming what sages hinted at long ago. 528 Hertz is not superstition. It is resonance, and it speaks directly to the body. When sound vibrates at 528 cycles per second, something remarkable happens. Biologists have observed that damaged strands of DNA, those delicate spirals that carry the story of who you are, begin to reorganize. It is as if the double helix recognizes the tone, remembers its original design, and tries to straighten itself. This is not myth, but measurement. Modern laboratories have witnessed genetic material exposed to 528 Hertz, showing signs of repair, as though an ancient tuning fork had struck the very code of life. The effects don't stop at the microscopic level. People who work with this frequency report their heart rates slowing, their breath deepening, their nervous systems easing into calm. Muscles unclench. The fog of stress lifts. A body that has been living on high alert begins to trust again. The message carried in the frequency is simple. You are safe. You can heal. This is why 528 Hertz is often called the tone of the cosmic heart. It doesn't command or demand. It reassures. It creates the conditions in which the body remembers how to rest, how to repair, how to open without fear. If trauma is the sound of life gone out of tune, then 528 Hertz is the pitch that helps the instrument find its center once more. What makes this discovery so powerful is that it bridges two worlds we often keep apart. On one side, the language of mystics and priests who spoke of love frequencies and divine harmonics. On the other, the language of scientists measuring cell vibration and genetic stability in 528 Hertz. The two meet. It becomes the common ground where faith and fact shake hands. Imagine chanting or humming at this frequency, not as a performance, but as participation in the same force that sustains galaxies. Your chest resonates, your cells respond, and your body receives a message older than memory. You are part of this harmony. That is why, when used with intention, the practice is not only spiritual, but deeply human. It reconnects us to the part of ourselves that is never truly broken, only waiting to be tuned again. The tone of the cosmic heart is not hidden away in a temple or reserved for a chosen few. It is here, accessible, alive in your own voice. And every time you choose to enter that vibration, you are not just healing, you are remembering. After the chant fades, something unexpected begins. For many, the instinct is to rush, to fill the empty air with another sound, another breath, another movement. Yet the ancients insisted that the true power of the practice comes not only from the vibration itself, but from what follows, 11 seconds of silence. To the untrained ear, silence feels like nothing. But to those who have walked this path, silence is everything. Think of it this way: a melody without pauses is not music, but noise. The spaces between the notes give the song its shape, its meaning. In the same way, the quiet after your chant is not absence, it is integration. The energy field, stirred awake by 33 seconds of sound, needs a place to settle. In those 11 seconds, the vibration finds its home. Cells absorb it. The nervous system reorganizes. The heart shifts into a calmer rhythm. Silence is the soil where the seed of sound begins to grow. Ancient practitioners described it as everything at rest. They did not mean the body was empty, but that all movement was held in balance, like a lake, with no ripples reflecting the sky above. In that stillness, something miraculous happens. The sound you offered stops being external and becomes internal. It is no longer a tone in the air. It is a frequency woven into you. If you skip this step, the chant remains only an echo, quickly fading into the background noise of life. But when you honor the silence, you give the vibration permission to imprint itself into your field. That is why they called it the seal. Without it, the door you opened swings shut. With it, the door remains open, and the current continues to flow long after the sound itself is gone. In our world of constant motion, 11 seconds may feel unbearably long. Yet when you surrender to it, those seconds stretch, becoming fast, timeless, sacred. Many describe sensations in this pause: warmth spreading through the chest, the release of a deep sigh, the strange yet soothing sense that time has slowed. It is not emptiness, it is presence at its purest. The secret is that the silence is not passive. It is active participation in the rhythm of the universe. Creation itself moves in cycles: expansion and rest, sound and silence, life and renewal. To practice these 11 seconds is to step into that rhythm, to remind the body that healing is not forced, it is allowed, and when you allow it, the miracle is already taking root. When you sing a note into the air, it seems to vanish as quickly as it arrives. But in truth, every sound leaves an imprint. Modern experiments with cymatics sprinkling sand or droplets of water on a vibrating plate reveal patterns so precise they look like sacred art. Circles, spirals, mandalas, even the flower of life itself, all emerging from nothing more than sound waves. What the ancients intuited, science is only now confirming. Vibration has shape. Now imagine your own voice as the instrument. Each tone you release does not disappear. It sketches designs in the space around you. Some are simple, like ripples on water. Others are complex, like stained glass windows woven from invisible threads. To chant with clarity is to draw clear geometry. To chant with doubt is to blur the pattern, like trying to paint with an unsteady hand. The universe, it seems, responds to precision, not perfection of pitch, but precision of presence. The Egyptians described this process as a kind of architecture of the unseen. A chant was not just a prayer, it was a construction. The air became a temple wall, the vibration, a pillar, the silence, the foundation. Over time, repeated tones would build a resonance so strong that stepping into it felt like entering a sacred space. Even if no physical structure stood there, sound itself became the temple. This is why chanting can feel so strangely physical. Many practitioners report sensations of space widening around them, as though the walls of the room had shifted. Others describe seeing faint patterns when their eyes are closed, mandalas forming and dissolving, lines of light dancing in rhythm with their own hum. These are not hallucinations, they are glimpses of the geometry your voice is weaving. To think of chanting this way is to approach it not as performance, but as spiritual engineering. Each syllable you sing is a brick, each pause a joint of mortar. With patience and focus, you are not just producing sound, you are designing reality. Line by line, note by note, the temple may be invisible to the eye, but the body and the soul know it is there. And when you step into it, you are stepping into a structure you yourself have created, a sanctuary drawn from nothing but breath and vibration. Every one of us carries timelines inside. Some are bright and flowing, but others are broken records, repeating the same moment of fear or grief again and again. Trauma does not pass with the calendar. It lodges itself in the nervous system, convincing the body that the danger never ended. Fear becomes a loop. A single memory replays itself, not only in thought, but in heart rate, in breath, in muscle tension. We may leave the past behind, but the past does not always leave us. This is where sacred sound begins to show its deeper power. When you chant with presence for 33 seconds, it is as if you strike a crack through that frozen timeline. The vibration does not erase memory, but it shakes loose the rigid structure that keeps memory looping. It opens a gap, a place where a new pattern can enter. Neuroscience offers its own explanation. Chanting shifts the brain from the high alert frequencies of survival into slower, deeper rhythms. In these states, the mind is no longer locked in hypervigilance. It is receptive, fluid, able to process what was once unbearable. Trauma lives in the body as constant readiness for impact. Chanting interrupts that readiness, guiding the nervous system back towards safety. Many who practice describe the moment vividly. At first, they feel trapped inside the same cycle, the same images, the same pulse of panic. Then, as the tone holds steady, something wavers. It might be a sudden breath, a surprising tear, or a warmth rising in the chest. These are the signs of the crack. The loop is no longer seamless. Energy begins to flow where it was once locked. Healing, then, is not about forgetting. It is about liberation. To chant is to step out of the prison of yesterday and the anxiety of tomorrow, and to stand, if only for a moment, in the stillness of now. That moment may last seconds at first, but repeated practice strengthens it, widens the crack until light pours in. And what was once a cycle of fear becomes a pathway forward. The ancients may not have used the language of neuroscience, but they knew the effect intimately. They spoke of chanting as a way to rewrite the scroll of the soul, allowing what was stuck to be released and what was dormant to awaken. In their terms, every sound offered in presence was an act of time travel, pulling the self out of endless repetition and into freedom. You do not need to know the science to feel it. All you need is the courage to hold a tone and to allow the silence that follows. That is where liberation waits, in the fragile crack in the timeline, where the past loosens its grip and a different future quietly begins to emerge. There comes a point in the practice when the ordinary walls of perception begin to tremble. It is subtle at first. Your breath deepens, your skin tingles, and then something unexpected happens. The veil, that thin boundary between conscious awareness and what lies beneath, begins to soften. Memories you thought were long gone stir. Images flash behind your closed eyes, some familiar, others strange, as if borrowed from another lifetime. Tears rise, sometimes with no story attached, flowing simply because the sound has found its way to a place words never reached. This is where many feel fear. Why am I seeing this? Why am I crying? Am I doing something wrong? But the truth is the opposite. These moments are not mistakes. They are signs of release, frozen emotions, griefs we buried, shames we silenced, pains we could not face, do not dissolve on their own. Therapy may help us understand them, but vibration is what unlocks them. The voice acts like a vibrational needle, touching scars hidden in the deepest layers and loosening what has been trapped there for years, even decades. Practitioners across traditions have described this same threshold. Some speak of heat rising through the body, others of sudden laughter bubbling out of nowhere, still others of visions of sacred geometry or encounters with ancestors. These experiences differ in form, but their root is the same. The field has opened. What was veiled is now visible, and the body finally has a way to release what it has carried in silence. Compassion is essential here, not only from guides or teachers, but from yourself. So often we judge our tears or panic when strange images appear, but compassion whispers, stay with it. The fear you feel is not a warning to stop. It is the shell breaking, the shaking, the visions. The tears are not signs of collapse. They are signs of freedom, trying to emerge. In the Egyptian mysteries, this stage was considered sacred. The priests taught that when the veil thinned, the soul was remembering. You were not collapsing into madness. You were awakening into memory. Not all memory belongs to this life. Some of it is deeper, ancestral, archetypal, carried in the very vibrations of the body. To touch those memories is not to drown in the past, but to realize that you are more than your present wounds. The work is not always easy. It can be messy, unpredictable, even frightening. But within that rawness lies the promise of transformation. What has been hidden must rise to the surface before it can leave. And when it does, the body grows lighter, the mind clearer, the heart more spacious. So when the veil thins and the tears come, remember, this is not failure. This is the sound doing what it was meant to do. It is breaking open the chambers of silence and letting the old echoes finally fade. On the other side of that trembling lies freedom, waiting with open hands. There is a moment in the journey when practice is no longer something you do, but something you become. The chanting, the silence, the trembling releases. Over time, they reshape the very field around you. What once felt like effort begins to feel like presence. Your energy steadies, your breath moves without strain, and the sound is no longer separate from you. It is you. You are not merely producing vibration. You are the vibration. When that shift occurs, everything changes. People who step into your space can feel it, often without knowing why. They relax more quickly. Arguments soften. The air itself feels calmer, as if your presence is reordering the room. You don't need to speak about healing or lecture about wisdom. Your field speaks for you. Light doesn't shout, it shines. And in that shine, others remember their own light. This is the real alchemy, not the fabled turning of lead into gold, but the transformation of life's rawest materials into something luminous. Pain, once suffocating, becomes wisdom, carried gently. Chaos, once overwhelming, becomes order woven quietly into your presence. People often imagine spiritual power as dramatic, loud, or forceful, but its deepest form is subtle, effortless, undeniable. It is the stillness that steadies a storm without ever raising its voice. The ancients knew this. To them, the mastery of sacred sound was never about control. It was about resonance, living so aligned with vibration that you became a tuning fork for everything around you. A priest could walk into a chamber and, without chanting a single syllable, the atmosphere would shift. That wasn't magic, it was continuity. A life lived in vibration becomes a life that vibrates naturally, spilling over into the world without effort. This is where practice leads not endless striving, but integration. You no longer chase experiences or visions, you embody them. You move through the world not as a seeker, but as a source. And the true sign of this state is humility. The one who has become vibration does not claim power. They radiate it quietly, as sunlight radiates without trying. The real alchemy, then, is not in the sound you make, but in the life you live after the sound. To chant until your field stabilizes is to step into a different kind of being, one where your very presence heals, calms, and inspires. It is to realize that the greatest gift you can give is not your words, not even your song, but the vibration of who you are. When you remember yourself as part of the living harmony of the cosmos, in the end, the secret has never been hidden in temples or guarded by priests. It has always been here, in the vibration that rises from your own chest. Your voice is not small, not ordinary. It is the very instrument that reconnects you to the harmony of the universe. Say it with me now, not as a phrase, but as a seal. My voice is my healing. Type it in the comments. Let it become our shared ritual, a circle of sound carried across distance and time. If you have felt warmth, if you have felt tears, if you have felt even the smallest crack in the silence of your heart, it means you are ready. Ready to remember who you are and what you carry. This journey doesn't end here. It only deepens. In the next video, we'll step further into the field, exploring how to sustain this resonance together. Until then, hold the truth close. Your voice is your healing, and when you use it with intention, you are never alone.